This is an ADC warning. The crimes you're about to see are true. Only the names were changed to protect the ignorant. Tonight, on America's Dumbest Criminals, you'll see a 10-year cab ride, a dumb criminal who uses his head, and a criminal who has a very bad payday. These are just a few of America's Dumbest Criminals. Hi, and welcome to the show. I'm Daniel Butler. What makes a dumb criminal dumb? Well, we know that drugs, alcohol, greed, and just old bad luck are all contributing factors. But what really makes a dumb criminal dumb is not thinking. And tonight, we've got a cell block full of crooks who were brain dead before arrival. These guys are America's dumbest criminals. Our first story is about a burglar who breaks in and then has to use his head to break out.
About 18 years ago, I received a burglary call to a Quick Mart. Old service station had been made into a Quick Mart. Got there, and right at the base of the window was a small hole. My backup car said, "There's no way anybody got in there," and said, "We're going to leave." And where it crawled, the suspect had crawled in, it was a rather small hole. It didn't appear that anybody could have gotten in. And I decided that I would just ease back and wait to see, and I was waiting on the owner to come down and check his building too. I just had that feeling somebody was in there. That second intuition, I guess. So about 45 minutes later, I see a young criminal stick his head out from the storage room in the back. And he's looking all around like he's looking for the police. He knows we're already gone, but I'm not already gone. So he had his arms loaded down with probably 20, 25 cartons of cigarettes. And he lowers his head and starts running as fast as he can, gonna run through the front door, which is a plate glass window. The only thing is, it has that push bar across the center of it. He hit the push bar, knocked himself out, and fell backwards. He was knocked out until the owner of the store got there and opened up the door, and I was able to go and handcuff him. And he won't know where he was at then.
Some of these criminals are unconscious, especially that guy. In New Jersey, it used to be against the law for women to wear sharp-pointed hair barrettes, but it was legal to wear dead ferrets. Next, we go to Las Vegas, where Carolyn Green has a story for us about a jewel fool.
We had an elderly lady come into the station. She appeared to be about 75. She was accompanied by a gentleman who appeared to be in his mid-30s.
I'd like to report my jewelry stolen.
She just needs to collect insurance. I just drove her.
Sir.
At each of our complaint desks, we have a sign that says one person per desk because of the space accommodations. She stated she wanted to report her jewelry stolen. So one of the office staff proceeds to begin the report. The usual, your name, your address, when did it happen, what's missing.
Well, there were 2 diamond rings. One of them was appraised at $1,500. That was my mother's, and then I...
When we got to the suspect information part, they asked if she knew the name. Yes, she did. Where did he live? She gave the address, and the clerk just, ears kind of perked up, you know, and she said, on into the report, do you know where this gentleman is now? And she said, yes, I do.
As a matter of fact, I do. He's sitting right over there.
And it was, wait a minute. Your suspect accompanied you to the station to report the loss of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. Yes.
Miss Birdsong, what did you tell them?
He was taken into custody, admitted the theft.
You think I knew, but I did.
I don't know.
But it was a little unusual for a suspect to accompany the victim to file the crime report.
Oh, I guess I'll need a ride home now, officer.
It was most unusual.
ABC quiz number 911. The largest haul of marijuana ever seized by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration occurred in February 1982. How much pot did they get? Was it A, 3,200 tons, B, 5,050 tons, or C, a whole lot more, man, than anybody's ever seen? The correct answer was A, 3,200 tons, which is also sort of the same as C. Coming up on America's Dumbest Criminals, a guy who takes a cab ride and the meter is still running. Welcome back. And now, further proof that drinking and thinking don't mix.
I got called to a house one evening, and I met this cab driver, and the cab driver said, the guy in the house just robbed me. So I took down this physical description, and I said, how do you know it was the guy in the house? He said, well, first of all, I picked him up at the tavern, and he said the guy was pretty intoxicated, and so then he wanted me to take him home, and I brought him out here. And he said, I asked him for the money. And
I said that would be $5.
Oh, $5. Just a minute, man. You know what? I don't have my money with me. I have to go into my house and get my money. I'll be back just a minute. Don't move.
And he said, I was a little bit leery of that, but he said, I really didn't have any recourse. You know, here's the guy and here's the house. And he said, the guy went in the house, and he said he staggered in and stayed there about 2 or 3 minutes, and he staggered back out. And he said, give me all your money. And I said, well, you're crazy. I want your money, you know, for the cab fare. And he stuck a gun in my face. He said, I don't have any money in the house, so I'm going to have to take your money. So he said he robbed me and went back in the house, and he's in the house now. So I knocked on the door and never did get an answer. And I knocked again. The door was open, and I could see him in there. And I said, is this the guy? And the cab driver looked through the door, and he said, yeah, that's him.
Yeah, that's the man who robbed me, and that's my money on the table. Cuff him before
I
he
said,
wakes
well,
up.
we'll just go and get him then. You know, we've got a positive ID. And he got 10 years out of that.
What originally would have cost him $10 now cost him 10 years. In Tennessee, it used to be against the law for a frog to croak after midnight, but huge snails could squeal all night long. You'd think that even a dumb criminal would be able to spell his own name, but nope.
Working a robbery detail and saw this guy acting very suspicious around one of the stores. So I waited till he came by some bushes and snatched him off the road there and asked him his name.
Randall Michael Huddleston. I'd like to check for stops on a Randall Michael Huddleston. Well,
I ran records and there was an outstanding warrant on him. So I said, well, we're going to have to go to the station.
I have to go downtown. Oh. Unhood. Come on, spread your leg out.
Listen, officer, my name is really Roland Ephraim Blair.
So I went and pulled his record, and sure enough, there was outstanding warrant on him as well. I said, now, what is your name?
Roland Ephraim Blair.
I said, well, spell that for me.
R-O-L-A-N-D.
No, the middle one. Ephraim?
Yeah. Well, I don't use it much. It's my mama's name, and
oh yeah,
and I just call her Mama.
Right.
And that was his name.
Well, it's his name. He can misspell it any way he wants to. And now, actual surveillance cam footage of a convenience store robbery we call slip-up. We apologize for the poor quality of the video, but the stupidity quality is very good. In the upper left-hand corner, this convenience store clerk is mopping a floor when a customer enters. He returns to his counter, and the dumb criminal remarks that you wouldn't want anyone to slip on that floor. Now, the clerk is behind the counter on the right, and the dumb criminal makes a purchase of some gum and pays for it. The clerk rings it up and opens the register. Now, at this point, look closely. The dumb criminal pulls a knife, but the knife is not open. But he does point it at the clerk and threaten him. He insists that the clerk open the cash register, but the clerk doesn't take him seriously. So then the dumb criminal puts the unopened knife in his jacket and pretends like it's a gun. The clerk still isn't buying this. So now the dumb criminal pulls out the knife, again unopened, insisting that the clerk open the cash register. Now he decides to get serious. He comes around the counter and opens the knife. The clerk insists that the man leave the building before he gets into a lot of trouble. But now he's swiping at the clerk. Unfortunately, he feigned the clerk off towards the deli counter where the clerk picks up a bigger knife, a butcher knife, in fact. Now a small sword fight ensues between the penknife and the butcher knife. The clerk refuses to open the register and insists that the man leave. Now, the clerk gets a trash can. The man is beating on the electronic register. Finally, he decides to flee. But first, he decides to take the huge, heavy electronic cash register. He didn't unplug it, though. Watch the cord now as it spools out. Hitting the wet floor, bam! Our dumb criminal takes it on the rear. Yep, he just busted his back. He ran out of the store with the register, and the police found him in the vacant lot next door, still trying to open it. In our opinion, this is the dumbest crime ever caught on surveillance cam. Now, let's go to Decatur, Illinois, where we're about to catch a criminal who got his hands on some cold cash. A burglar had broken into a home in a quiet neighborhood and taken a couple of $100 in coins that were kept in the freezer. Not much to go on until the officer stopped at a gas station.
Well, you know, it's funny you should mention. A guy came in here the other day. It was cold. I mean, I didn't think much about it, but well, it happened. Thank you.
The very next day, the guy with the cold quarters stopped back by the market. Turns out he lived in the neighborhood. The amazing thing was, the quarters were still cold. That meant that he was storing them in the freezer, I guess thinking that the quarters might melt if he took them out. The clerk simply took down the license number. A warrant was issued that afternoon, and the thief was picked up at his house, 1 block down the street.
Yeah, detective. Ken Thompson at the market.
You'd think he'd have waited a few minutes for the money to warm up or driven 5 blocks away for gas, but he didn't think at all, did he? In Texas, it used to be against the law for a woman to pull up her stockings in public, but oddly enough, she could legally ride a horse naked. Now, inside the courtroom for trial and error, a police officer describes an attempted bank robbery where the criminal broke in and stayed in.
Officer Huddleston.
Yes, sir.
Is there a witness who saw the actual person who broke into the bank?
No, sir, but...
A yes or no will suffice. Is there any surveillance camera footage of the actual perpetrator?
No, sir, but
Thank you. Then on what basis do you charge my client?
Well, sir, he broke into the basement, he couldn't get the money, and he couldn't get back out. So, I guess that's when he figured out he should call 911.
Coming up later, a dumb criminal signs his confession with spray paint on America's dumbest criminals. Next, a dumb criminal flags down a police officer to get a lift that winds up being a ride to jail.
Well, actually, he was flagging a car down the middle of the street, known dope drug area. So I go over, and I pull him over. I said, come over here, let me talk to you. I said, what are you doing flagging cars down the middle of the street? He says, well, no, I'm just trying to get a ride. I was trying to ask that guy for a ride. I said, you know that's disorderly conduct. You're stopping traffic like that. Then he gives me this lame excuse that he wants to go to Salvation Army, and that's why he's flagging down his truck.
I know that, sir. I was just trying to get a ride, so I wouldn't be about my business, officer. I promise you.
I'll give you a ride.
All right, okay.
I'm going to have to search you before I can put you in my car. He said, okay, officer, fine. Got this matchbox up here in his pocket. I said, well, I'm going to have to check this, because back then, drug dealers were known to put crack rocks in matchboxes. I opened the matchbox, and there's the crack. So basically what he did was he gave me reasonable suspicion, probable cause, consent to search. It's almost like he wrote his own arrest report to go to jail.
That's what can happen when the criminals start pulling over the police. In Alabama, it used to be against the law for a person to crawl on the street, but it was legal to slide in a swamp. And now it's showtime when the Las Vegas Police Department goes Hollywood.
I approached my captain and the police administration and asked them to give me an opportunity to do a graffiti sting involving a movie production company that was fabricated by undercover officers, and they gave the go-ahead. And the operation involved was to set up a warehouse and a movie production company, and then send out flyers asking for graffiti artists that are tagging in Las Vegas. And our goal was to get some of the higher-up taggers that we did not get in an earlier operation about 4 months earlier. And in a 2-week period, we had 57 phone calls of interested artists that were high profile, that showed us what they did in our studios, their artwork, if you could say that, or their vandalism. And our undercover officers, acting as a producer and director, would immediately ask these vandals, we want you in our picture, but we need to see your artwork outside on the walls of Las Vegas. And we had undercover officers acting as production assistants, took our undercover officers out and showed us where they had tagged all over Las Vegas. And then other officers acting as investigators went and assessed these areas, photographed it, put damage amounts to it, and at the end of the operation, we ended up arresting 28 juveniles with an estimated $150,000 worth of damage.
Come on, let's get your face
My
up
baby.
Here. This is it, man.
Baby Buzz.
Yeah.
Now he can decorate his own walls in jail. And now, actual surveillance cam footage of a dumb criminal candidate. Is this woman a dumb criminal? It's difficult to tell because she's shielding her face to cover her identity. Let's look closely now. Watch her carefully. Yep, she is. Welcome back. Now, a robber fleeing from a bank unexpectedly runs into some people on their way to the bank.
One morning we had a bank robbery. I was working patrol, headed toward that direction, and lo and behold, the criminal went right by me. He just nails it and takes off. Of course, I was right behind him, took off right after him. He barely makes it through an intersection, a busy, busy intersection. He slid through that intersection, barely missed T-boning another car, and then took off again. Well, little did he know that it was payday. And at the next major intersection, we had 6 officers waiting there to get their paychecks. Needless to say, traffic was back up at the light, thank God, and he couldn't stop, so he rear-ended a car. I mean, nailed it good. Jumped out of his car, threw the money under his car, and took off around a business. He comes around that building, back out to the street, and there's 4 officers there waiting on him.
Do you know what they say? Timing is everything. You know, we couldn't have done this show without the cooperation of the men and women of law enforcement across America. We'd like to thank them for their time, their dedication, and for making our lives a lot safer. And we learned that cops are just people too, with one exception. They're willing to lay down their lives for us.